Hello, everybody. Good afternoon, and welcome to the August Digital Inclusion 101. We're so happy that you've joined us this afternoon to talk about something very important, which is digital inclusion. Some housekeeping things before we get started. This webinar is being recorded, and we will share the recording, the presentation slides, and additional resources after the webinar. We do have a Q&A section at the end, so if you have any questions, put them in the Q&A chat, and our team will get to it at the end. All right, here's the schedule for the next hour. We'll start off with introducing you to NDIA if you're not familiar, or if you're new to our community. Then we're going to jump into digital inclusion definitions. We'll then shift to understanding barriers and do a little activity there. We'll talk about common solutions that we see our community of digital inclusion programmers doing and providing. Then we'll shift over to digital navigators. We'll also talk about digital inclusion coalitions. Then we'll jump into policy and joining the NDA community, and then after that, open it up to any questions and comments that you all may have. All right, I am joined here by my wonderful colleague, Shauna. So, Shauna, I will let you introduce yourself.
All right. Hi, everyone. Great to see you today. I'm Shauna Edson. I'm the Senior Policy Manager here at NDIA. So as Camilla mentioned, I will be talking about the policy section of policy that's important for digital equity.
Thank you, Shauna. So happy to have her here. And hi, everybody. I am Pamela She/They. I'm the Training and Community Engagement Manager with NDIA. I get to welcome new NDIA members into the community, do these bi-monthly DI 101s, oftentimes with Shauna by my side. And I'm based out in Madison, Wisconsin. All right. So about NDIA, NDIA stands for the National Digital Inclusion Alliance, and we advance digital equity by supporting community programs and equipping policymakers to act. We are a community of 2,000 affiliates strong, over 2,000 affiliates actually, and that also includes 47 tribal entities in all 50 states, including the District of Columbia, American Samoa, Northern Mariana Islands, Guam, Puerto Rico, and the U.S. Virgin Islands for affordable broadband access to devices, and digital skills training and support. Here at NDIA, we have plenty of knowledge sharing forums, which includes our very popular NDIA listserv, our monthly community calls, and we also have various working groups like our coalitions working group and digital navigator working group, where we hear what is and isn't working on the ground from community organizations like you all. And what we do is we take the lessons that we've learned, and then we align our policy efforts as well as the resources that are oftentimes free that come from NDIA. We base that based off of the work that you are all doing and what we're hearing. All right, so let's start off with some definitions. So the first is digital divide. This is what we say is the issue. It is the gap between those who have affordable access, skills, and support to effectively engage online and those who do not. And this divide has existed since the beginning of the internet. And we really saw through the pandemic how it created a lot of awareness. It exposed the reality that many communities don't have that same access to high-speed internet, digital skills, and support to engage online. And we saw this through cost, people having to make the decision between groceries, or keeping their internet service because it was just too expensive. We also saw the impact of this through education. So students falling behind in class because they couldn't connect to their virtual classrooms or they didn't know how to navigate their device. And then we also saw the impact here through the job market, right? So folks not being able to participate in the competitive job market because they either did not own a device or they didn't have the essential digital skills to apply for those jobs, such as creating a resume or having an email for those applications, that communication in between applying and getting that interview, or knowing how to upload their resume to a site like Indeed or to a company's website. And then, of course, lack of infrastructure is also an issue. So communities not having access to connect to the internet because the infrastructure simply isn't there. And so this gap exists because of underinvestment in broadband in low-income communities. So an investigation by the markup found that residents of historically redlined areas receive significantly slower internet speeds. And Shauna will talk more about digital redlining later, but just to be familiar with the term digital redlining, it is discrimination by internet service providers, or ISPs for short, in deployment, maintenance, upgrade, or delivery of services. All right, next term is digital equity, which is we call the goal. So just some understanding of NDIA's definition, the background of it. When NDIA was created in 2015, one of our first priorities was to collaborate with our community with the goal of developing accurate language for the work that's happening on the ground. You know, how do you describe this work where you're helping people find low-cost internet plans or helping people learn how to use their device, or staying safe on the internet? What should that work be called? What is a word that really describes that? And the result from that is creations of terms like digital equity and digital inclusion. And so our community is our primary source in developing vocabulary around our movement, and they will continue to do so. And so digital equity, it's that condition where everyone in our community can get online and use the internet in the way that they want to. So, there's a lot of benefits with digital equity and being able to use the internet, right? It enables all of our community members to engage, participate, and be active members in our society. So this shows up through education advocacy. So being able to stay up to date on current events, which is evident a need right now. And also through the listserv this morning, somebody had shared that the Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA, is now requiring disaster survivors to have an email address in order to register for federal aid. So this is a really good example of why digital inclusion work and digital equity is a necessity, because when you think about those survivors who don't have an email address, don't know how to set one up because they don't have a device to do that, how are they then able to apply or register for this type of aid, right? Um, Other benefits is being able to advocate for causes and finding a community around shared interests around the things that are very important to you. We see the benefits of digital equity through healthcare access, right? So now people are able to utilize telehealth services, not having to call off work or arrange for childcare because they're able to meet with their provider online or get a diagnosis remotely. They could also manage their bills online and schedule appointments online, which is very equitable for a lot of folks. And on top of, the necessities like paying bills, finding uh, resources like government programs. There's also enrichment, right? That enrichment aspect that digital equity provides, like being able to connect to the internet and using it safely. So, for example, is learning new skills. We just had a team meeting, and there's a few team members on our team that are learning a new language all through the internet, all through YouTube, right? So it can provide that kind of exploration, new world building in that way. You can also learn new cooking recipes or music, creating new playlists, things like that. And, finding a community, right? Whether it's people who have the same kind of identity, whatever those identities are, whether it's through politics or just hobbies, being able to use the internet can connect you to worlds that you might not be able to do in person. And it also allows you to stay connected to your friends and family wherever they are or wherever you are, especially right now, making sure you're checking in on each other and you're all safe. So why equity, right? Why not digital equality? And to simply put, equality does not serve our communities, right? So equality is where everyone gets the same resources, opportunities, and solutions. And that truly only works when everybody has the same barriers and the same roadblocks. And the reality is that that's just not the case for everybody, let alone different types of communities, right? Older adults have different roadblocks compared to veterans, compared to low income folks. And they can all they could all share uh, the same types of issues, but very often it'll never be a circle in that Venn diagram of of barriers they share, right? So equity recognizes that there are different circumstances and barriers that different community members and communities face. And so it's about distributing resources effectively to reach an equal outcome. So this is kind of what that image is showing, where the left is equality, everybody's getting 3 books, but nothing's really changed. They're all still starting from where they were 3 books before. But on the right side is equity, where they had the same amount of books. It's still 6 books, but they've redistributed it. So now everybody's starting at that same level, same starting point as much as they can, right? So digital equity is meeting people where they are. So this requires understanding specific challenges to internet access and effective use. Is the barrier that is it cost? Why the community isn't online? Is it cost, or is it because they don't have the necessary devices or the skills that they need to use the internet? What do those barriers for that community look like? And also, equity demands that we avoid making assumptions of the barriers that exist in a specific community or in a specific group. So, some examples of community barriers, those are systemic barriers like digital redlining that we briefly talked about. Some of them are economic barriers. So, this is where cost comes in, like high cost of internet subscription. And another type of barrier is skills-based. So, limited digital skills, for people to use the internet or use their device. So achieving digital equity, it's by learning the community needs. So seeing how if your trainers or your digital equity training, are your trainers multilingual, or do they come from that shared experience that the community members that you're serving has? Is the event accessible? Is it in a location that is physically accessible to the community? Is it a safe space for that community? Is it easily accessible via public transport? Is there a cost? And then also community input. Did you speak to trusted community leaders of that community? Let's say you're doing an event there. Are you understanding of what those unique barriers and sensitivities are? It's really important to make sure that your program is structured based off of what those communities' unique needs are. And then we have digital inclusion. So this is the work. So it's the activities necessary to achieve digital equity. So this is things like access to reliable and affordable high-speed internet, access to affordable and appropriate devices, and providing digital skills training and support. And this is kind of another way to demonstrate that this is the road to digital equity. By no means does this mean that there is an end part to this road. It's more of there are different things you have to be aware of as we kind of navigate this type of work. There's going to be organizations that kind of tackle and cover different areas of digital inclusion. So there are organizations that focus on affordable high-speed internet or connecting their members to high-speed, low-cost internet. There's going to be organizations that focus on providing devices or digital skills training and providing tech support like digital navigators, and we'll talk more about how that looks. All right, so we are going to do a little activity to kind of understand the barriers of digital inclusion. And I really love doing this activity because I like to learn what barriers exist for different communities. So there should be a link in the chat soon of a Padlet. And the question to think about is, what prevents people in your community from consistently connecting to the internet and using it effectively? If you're not able to participate in Padlet, that's fine. You can just put your answers in the chat. Um, and I will pause my screen for a moment so I can open up Padlet. Okay, here we go. And to participate on Padlet, go ahead on the bottom right corner. Should be a plus sign. If you hover over it, it'll turn into a pencil. Click on that. You can type anything. Well, type the answer, your answer here, and then press publish, and you're good to go. So again, what prevents people in your community from consistently connecting to the internet and using it effectively? Liz, thank you. Liz says a lack of support in learners' native languages to learn how to use technology. Thank you so much for sharing that. Making sure that your training is in the language that that community speaks in, especially if English is not a second language for them. That is really crucial. Carol, only have a cell phone to attend an online class, lack of reliable internet connection. Thank you, Carol, for sharing that. Making sure that, our community members have the appropriate device, and oftentimes a cell phone for attending classes, is going to be very difficult in that learning process. So exactly. Cost is also mentioned here. Um, Katie says lack of digital education access technology for older adults. Absolutely. Or if there are programs catered to older adults, that type of outreach isn't hitting those places where older adults are able to see that, right? I'm seeing here cost. Someone, Austin brought up not having reliable housing. Austin also says thinking they're too old to learn how to use the internet. Absolutely. So there's a lot of beliefs here too, which is could be a huge barrier that our community has brought up. There's a lot of shame and fear for exploring what the internet can do. Seeing a lot of organizations or companies get hacked, it can be a scary thing. So that's enough for somebody to not want to get involved or not even want to explore what the benefits are, and not knowing that there are ways to protect yourself. Someone says geographic location to access resources, lack of transportation. Yes, maybe the only lab available is at the library, and that's really far for them to access. Or they're in a rural location where those community resources, you have to do a long travel just to access. That's a huge barrier for sure. Sarah says lack of experience with technology and also lack of internet connection. Yes, exactly. Um, the Happy Armadillo says not knowing how to navigate the hardware and software options. Exactly. Perfect. It sounds like you are all very in tuned with your community and the unique needs that they have. Um, Oh, and Emmer also says money to pay for internet at home. Yes, cost is mentioned quite a lot. Ability to navigate the internet, and then lack of technology skills. Awesome. Thank you all for indulging me. I will go back to my screen share, and here is another kind of general list of key barriers that we find our community members sharing when providing services. So affordability, whether it's with broadband or even getting a device, seems to be what was mentioned a lot. Having an unreliable service, right? If the weather goes out, or for whatever reason the infrastructure is not up to date, if the service is not reliable and high speed, that will absolutely be a barrier. If the service is outdated on their device, like if you need Zoom for work, but your device isn't able to handle the most updated Zoom, then that's going to be very frustrating. And you're most likely, I don't even know if you're able to connect. And then with digital skills or those soft skills, right? The class not being done in a language that they can understand. There are some beliefs there that can be hindering them, and then the training's not being accessible. So thank you all. So here are kind of the key solutions that our affiliates really address. So like affordable broadband, affordable devices that are appropriate, and then digital skills training. So we'll go through each. All right. This is a quote from the city of Portland. They did a Portland broadband equity study and very highly recommend you all check that out. But one of their interviewees said between choosing internet and other things, it's a choice between food and all other things we need for having internet, which the kids need for school. So you see people having to juggle, splitting costs between food, internet, which is also tied to education. But this is a great quote to demonstrate that digital equity, it goes beyond the wires on the ground, right? Having infrastructure is key, absolutely. But it does then put to question, are people subscribing to that internet? Are they using it? And if not, then why not? Because if the infrastructure is there, what are the other gaps that we're not seeing? All right. So, what is broadband? It is the transmission of wide bandwidth data over a high-speed internet connection. And the Federal Communications Commission, FCC, they expanded their definition of broadband last year, March 2024, to now it is 100 megabits for download, 20 megabits for upload, which was a significant increase from the previous, which was 25 download, 3 upload, and that was created in 2013. And so again, why does broadband matter? High-speed home internet connection, it is a necessity, not a luxury, right? So we kind of saw that with that example I shared from the listserv this morning, that now, disaster survivors are now required to have email to sign up for aid. And so another example of broadband's importance is when you think about, paying bills. How did you pay your most recent bill? Most likely online, right? Getting government access to government funding, or even just government forms and documents, you will need internet to be able to access that at least easily, or else you're going to have to go to that building. Also, access to healthcare, right? Being able to meet with your healthcare professionals virtually, which is crucial for underserved communities. And it also helps level out the playing field for certain communities, like for remote work, people having the ability for higher paying jobs or skill development. And for communities that don't have specific courses, now through online learning, people can access courses that are not locally available. So again, this brings up the term of broadband adoption. So it's that daily access to the internet at high speeds with sufficient quality and capacity that is necessary for common online tasks like paying your bills or streaming shows or playing video games with those necessary digital skills on a personal device and a secure, convenient network. And so for the digital inclusion programs that focus on low cost, affordable connectivity, there are technical approaches. So for example, being a community owned internet service provider that directly provides internet connectivity to the community, that also looks like providing internet access in community spaces or buildings. So an example of this is Chicago Housing Authority. They have 9 digital resource centers located in various properties and community centers. And so they offer computer labs, technical support, and digital skills classes. So that's another way how that shows up. And then another way digital inclusion programs kind of address the low cost, affordable connectivity is through support and guidance. So this looks like educating community members about available low cost internet plans, and then also providing guidance on accessing these plans, or even, helping people fill out the application form. So a great resource here is the Honor Roll of Low Cost Internet Plans page. And this is great for if you are helping community members, search low cost internet plans in their area. So this is a list of current offers from internet service providers that have plans with speeds at or above the threshold of 100 megabits for downloading and 20 megabits for uploading. With cost, the plans have a maximum monthly subscription of $30 a month. And then the plans include have either no data caps or it's above 1 terabyte. Another great resource for you is the Digital Inclusion Program Manual. So this is a resource full of best practices and recommendations from the digital inclusion community. There is best practices and recommendations in terms of program development, program models and techniques, and as well as giving out guidance on creating a sustainable program. So that includes, community engagement, evaluation methods, and strategic partnerships. All right. Okay. Next up, we're going to talk about devices and appropriate devices. So for digital inclusion programs who focus on devices, that can look like providing those devices, so offering free or low cost devices to community members. It also looks like providing tech support, so providing device maintenance services as well as offering tech support. And we see this a lot, this learn to earn model. So this is where students complete a digital skills class, and once it's completed, they receive a device. We see that a lot. And then we also see refurbishing and recycling programs. So this is a source for quality, low cost computers and it's an opportunity for community members to learn more about device hardware as well. And so here is a kind of abbreviated pros and cons list of different devices because in order to for somebody to have a device that matches their needs, we need to know what the pros and cons are of each device. And this is kind of a shorter list compared to a fuller document that the Internet for Local, wait, in ILSR and AARP and NDIA, we work together to combine a more succinct list and includes that as a desktop. So if you want a more robust list of pros and cons of each device, you can look there. But it's still a good thing to kind of familiarize ourselves. So with a mobile phone, the pros here is that there's longer battery life and it's small and portable. But the cons, kind of like what was shared at the activity earlier, it does not replace a laptop. So it's not sufficient for extensive work, especially for like online learning. And it's really great for using apps or like internet browsing and communication on the go. With tablets, they're great for entertainment and with a bigger screen, you can really binge watch there, have a longer battery life, and they have definitely a more accessible touchscreen keyboard with a larger display and easy interface. However, you can't make calls on them unless you have a cellular data plan, and some apps might not be compatible. And then with the laptop, you have a nice big storage file capacity. However, they do have a shorter battery life, but they are especially the most expensive out of the three. So, and it's really great for working from home, which is almost an essential device at this point. Great for remote learning and tasks that require significant processing power and storage. And Digitunity, another great organization and NDIA affiliate, they developed this thing called Device Essentials for Digital Equity. And so it kind of looks at devices outside of these kind of main categories that people need in order to, use the internet effectively or do their jobs that if they're working remotely. So that includes things like a second monitor, a camera, a proper microphone, speakers, a wireless keyboard, a charging cord, things like that. So there are other kind of um, other devices to consider when thinking about these kind of main devices. And a great example is Tech Goes Home. So Tech Goes Home partners with social service organizations throughout Massachusetts to deliver courses focused on fundamental digital skills for adults. So these courses are offered at various locations like libraries, community centers, public housing, and other nonprofit organizations. And they do that learn to earn model that I was talking about earlier, where each learner receives a Chromebook and then if needed, 12 months of internet service, which is really amazing. All right. And then kind of the last thing in regards to um, those top three that I was talking about is digital skills training. So for inclusion programs, digital skills programs can be offered in different ways. So the first is through classes, like classes for community members at various skill levels. There can be a one-on-one support and training, and then there is also community support helplines for assistance for people to call in. And so it's important that digital skills programs understand their students' proficiency, right? So avoiding making assumptions about people's current skill levels, regardless of what their identities are. So, never assume someone's skill level based off of their age or whatever kind of identity markers they have, because you will truly be surprised. So the crucial step here is conducting a needs assessment, and that's essential for developing your course content. So that looks like determining, where their skills are at, what type of digital skills do they have, and then identifying, what those skills that that community wants to learn. And so at NDIA, we recommend the Essential Digital Skills Framework. This is intended to support adults seeking to improve their digital skills. So there's a lot of different categories when it comes to essential digital skills, like, for example, communication. So being able to communicate, collaborate, and share information. So that looks like being able to set up an email account, being able to post messages, pictures, and content, being able to use a word processing app to create documents. Um, and then another category is handling information. So being able to understand that not all information online is reliable and safe. Um, and being able to search for news on a browser like Chrome or Safari. And then another category here would be transacting. So being able to set up an online account. Um, so uh, it also looks like being able to upload your resume to a recruiting website, having skills like that. But then also for devices, it's like knowing how to turn your device on and off, knowing what those main important controls are on the device, like increasing the volume, knowing how to check when the battery is running low or when you should start charging it, things like that. And so a great example of a digital inclusion program is Community Tech Network, which I believe they're now called Digital Lift. So they hire culturally competent, fluent speakers to offer in-person and virtual digital skills classes. And so because they hire from the community members that they serve, they're able to provide their programs in all these different languages. So it goes past that translation on a flyer to people being able to see themselves represented and ask questions that is already a vulnerable question, but ask it in a way to somebody who kind of understands that culture and can understand it in their language, does add that special touch for people to feel safe when it comes to learning the internet and have a safer relationship with their device and digital skill building. All right. So just kind of monitoring the chat here. Okay, awesome. Next, we'll talk about digital navigators. So, um, they are a crucial element to digital inclusion work. Digital navigators are individuals who address the whole digital inclusion process with community members through repeated interaction. So this looks like helping a community member find an affordable internet plan, helping them find a refurbished or low-cost device, matching them with the best device based off of what that individual wants to do and what their needs are. And then it also helps them expand their digital skills. So it is a holistic approach glued together by empathy. And digital navigators are trusted guides, and they work with our community members to understand their priority and connect them to the right resource. So they can connect them to other digital inclusion programming that can best serve their needs. And so one example of this is Computer Reach. They are an organization, they refurbish computers and they send digital navigators into the home in both urban and rural areas throughout Pennsylvania. And I love this quote from their executive director, which is Dave Sevick. On a podcast, they said, when you're a digital navigator, it's 80% social work and 20% tech. So it just really shows the importance of that empathy piece, that that relatability piece, because people are asking them a lot of very sensitive questions. You know, it's not just I need to send this email. It's I need to connect with my family. I need to keep them up to date, or I need this job to, et cetera, et cetera. And so this is why we say that it's you can learn those skills of, you know, finding low-cost internet plans or learning what pros and cons are of each device, but it's that human element that really helps people break down those barriers, especially those fears that we were talking about earlier, so they can feel more confident navigating the internet. And so another resource for you here is our digital navigator model page. So the digital navigator model, it's an open and flexible model that can be adapted to fit the individual community member and that host organization. So NDIA and our community, we've developed a template and a lot of materials to support your digital navigator program. So you'll find our digital navigator toolkit recently published. You'll find an intake form and exit survey, a skills assessment that we were talking about earlier, follow-up survey, and then also a baseline digital navigator job description. All right. One more thing before I pass it over to Shauna is digital inclusion coalitions. So you are not alone in the work that you are doing. There are things like digital inclusion coalitions that really help kind of expand the impact of digital inclusion work in their communities. So, digital inclusion coalitions, there's a group of community organizations that share the common concern of digital inclusion. So, some of the members that can exist within a digital inclusion coalition are libraries, education institutions, housing authorities, workforce development, social services, civic organizations, and sometimes internet service providers. It really just depend on that coalition or community. And so, again, coalitions really help maximize the impact of digital inclusion efforts. So they help increase public awareness of digital inclusion issues within their community. It also helps create an alignment. So all these different organizations or different sectors, they can all focus their efforts on digital inclusion goals. And it also creates this networking effect. So it helps community organizations learn from one another. It also fosters a deeper understanding of digital inclusion needs across sectors. So people are able to understand, if a organization that's in the coalition serves older adults, if another organization serves students, you're able to kind of see how the digital divide impacts those unique communities there and then align your efforts to address both. So here's an example. This is the Alliance for Digital Equity in Western Massachusetts. And they are a community-focused organization working towards digital equity for everybody. And they help people understand what digital equity is in their community. And they work at a grassroots level to raise awareness and highlight community-focused efforts. So what's great about this image is you can see all the different types of organizations that this coalition consists of. So you can see it's pretty holistic. So they've got organizations focusing on devices and connectivity. They've got libraries, they've got digital navigators, folks that work on digital skills, older adults network. They've got government entities as well, community spaces and Wi-Fi. So this really does help get a holistic understanding of the digital equity needs in their community. So if you are able to join a coalition near you, check it out. And if you are curious if there is a digital inclusion near you, check out our Digital Inclusion Coalitions page. We have a map there. We conducted a survey last fall, and organizations who filled out or coalitions that filled and participated in the survey, their information is now on that map. So check it out, see if there's a coalition near you, and definitely participate. And a great resource for you is our Digital Inclusion Trailblazers. So they are municipal, county, or regional governments that are paving the way and providing excellent models for digitally inclusive communities. And they demonstrate how local governments can support their own digital inclusion ecosystem. And this is really great because it serves as a free and open knowledge database for digital inclusion resources and information by local governments. And our 2025 Digital Inclusion Trailblazer applications is open, or it's going to open August 25th. So stay tuned on our website and make sure to visit that page and submit an application. All right, I will pass it over to Shauna to talk more about policy.
Okay, thank you so much. Now that Pamela's covered a lot of the definitions, what digital inclusion is, and things that are happening with community based organizations and nonprofits on the ground, I'm going to switch to a higher policy level at the state and federal levels. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is the Digital Equity Act and give you a status update on that. So next slide. So the Digital Equity Act, or DEA programs, are managed by the National Telecommunications and Information Administration, or the NTIA. The Digital Equity Act had capacity grant funds that were available to states, as well as competitive grant that was open to local governments, nonprofits, community anchor institutions, education and workforce development organizations, as well as tribal entities, which were defined as Indian tribes, Alaska Natives, and Native Hawaiian organizations. All right, next slide. So I'm going to do an overview of the Digital Equity Act funding timeline. So you have some of the history of the Digital Equity Act. So the DEA was authorized by the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, or the IIJA, of 2021. And in that, the DEA was designated $2.75 billion to establish the 3 grant programs to promote digital equity and inclusion, which was the planning grant, the capacity grant, and the competitive grants. So the first set of funds in the Digital Equity Act was the State Planning Grant Fund. That grant period has opened and closed. And the result is that all states now have and territories have digital equity plans. So the next set of funds that were available was the State Digital Equity Capacity Grant Program. All states applied and were awarded funds for this last year. And then included in the State Digital Equity Capacity Grant Program, there was a Native Entities Capacity Grant Program. The application for that closed on February 7th, and awards are anticipated sometime during summer of this year. So we're kind of coming up towards the end of summer. We haven't seen anything yet. And then lastly, the competitive grant program applications were due on September 23rd of last year. And award announcements started in January of this year. Okay, next slide, please. So like I said, NTIA received applications from states and territories for its digital equity capacity grant program. This was $840 million in grant funding for states, territories, and Native entities to put their digital equity plans into action. So as a result of these funds, new digital inclusion activities and programs would have emerged this year, and states could have awarded subgrants to organizations doing digital equity work in their state. So maybe like some of the organizations that you all work with here. All right, next slide, please. So the status of the DEA capacity grant funds was $760.8 million was made available for application last year to states, 8.4 for territories, and 45.3 for Native entities. And then 2 more future NOFOs would distribute around $600 million. All right, next slide, please. So the competitive grant funds funded digital inclusion activities that aligned with the state digital equity plans. They enhanced or went beyond the state digital equity plan, so included some things that maybe the state digital equity plan didn't, or addressed barriers to the state digital equity plan didn't identify. So states sometimes have a higher level view, and community-based organizations or other local organizations might have come up with a program that better met the needs of their community, so they could have applied for these funds. All right, next slide, please. So here's the funding status for the competitive grant program. $1 billion was allocated for the first NOFO, and sorry if I didn't say this before. A NOFO is Notice of Funding Opportunity, which means that $1 billion was opened up for organizations to apply for. And there were 65 projects recommended for an award, totaling $619 million. And 4 projects within that had signed contracts. And then there are 2 future NOFOs with around $250 million that would be available in the future. Okay, next slide, please. So the current status of the Digital Equity Act, on May 8th, the president canceled the DEA via a social media post. And then on May 9th of this year, the administration terminated the DEA grant program. So that included both the capacity and competitive grant. They terminated it by sending letters to all competitive grantees and contracts with contracts as well as states and territories. So the battle for these funds has now moved to courts and Congress to get these funds reinstated. There is one exception to this cancellation. Native entities that applied for a Native entity set aside for both the capacity and competitive grant programs are still under review. So it's possible that funding will come through. since there's a few different rules there. Okay, next slide, please. So what is NDIA doing to try to get these funds back? Well, first of all, we're pursuing all of our options. We're continuing to we're continuing our advocacy efforts with Congress. We also, on June 18th of this year, we sent a sign-on letter to the Department of Commerce as well as NTIA requesting full reinstatement of the Digital Equity Act grant funds. This letter was signed by 156 individuals from 140 organizations serving communities from 39 states. So the letter urged the reinstatement of DEA programs that were canceled. We also included descriptions of the work that organizations would have done under the program, so things that would have been able to happen. And the people that signed on were people recommended for a competitive grant award, were planned sub-grantees from the states, as well as any sub-recipients, and organizations that support community programs that carry out digital inclusion work. So it was a really broad group of folks who came together to advocate for these funds. All right, next slide. So what can you do? Continue advocating directly to your members of Congress. Talk to them about how important these funds are, and then share some of the harms that canceling these funds is having on your community, your organization, with your Attorney General's office. Storytelling is so important. Sharing your story with local media, statewide newspapers, national outlets. If you do share your story in print anywhere, please post it on our listserv so we can elevate your story. This is super important because in order to save these funds or reenact these funds, we need more people to understand what these programs will actually do. And so that means things like helping people talk to their doctors, taking online classes, getting jobs, avoiding scams, all of the things that we've talked about today. This requires all of us to explain to policymakers what impact your programs have in your communities, and ask your community members to do the same. Okay, next slide. So advocacy can feel challenging and overwhelming. So NDIA created a suite of resources and tools that can be used for advocacy and awareness around the Digital Equity Act. And the link for that is shared in the chat. So we encourage you all to take a look at all of our resources, which include template letters, how to find your elected officials, information about what your state awards for both the competitive and capacity grant program looked like, so you can share that number, press release templates, all sorts of resources, and you're welcome to take these, download them, and copy them, and change what you need to make it make sense for you. They're just meant to be a template that you can adapt. Okay, next slide. I'm going to touch base on digital discrimination. So we're shifting away from the DEA. The rules for digital discrimination officially went into effect on March 24th. And the rules cover any aspect of broadband access that impedes, impairs, or denies equal access to that service. This could look like discrimination in pricing, customer service, and network and service infrastructure upgrades. So some of that redlining that Pamela talked about earlier. So the rules protect consumers if there was no intent to discriminate. This means that if someone was impacted by discrimination, the provider will be responsible even if that discrimination was not intentional. However, the new FCC chairman, Brandon Carr, eliminated the Digital Discrimination Task Force on January 21st of this year as part of ending the agency's promotion of digital equity and inclusion programs. So this time, the future of this program is uncertain. However, all individuals and communities can and should file complaints with the FCC, which a link to is in the chat, and provide details about any sort of discrimination that you faced. And you can also share your concerns about the elimination of the Digital Discrimination Task Force. Okay, next slide. So next we have broadband labels. So starting in October of last year, all ISPs must display broadband labels. And so the broadband labels are like a nutrition label for broadband plans. So your internet in your home, and it includes things like pricing, if an introductory rate was included, data allowances, so if it meets that 100/20 threshold or not, performance, I'm sorry, data caps would be how much data you're allowed, performance metrics, meaning how fast your internet is, latency, things like that. So I'd highly encourage you to see if you can find a broadband label for your plan by looking up your internet service provider's website, and you can compare that to your bill and see if it matches what you're paying. But I do have an additional note about this program. On August 14th, so just last week, President Donald Trump revoked the executive order 14036, which is what directed the FCC to adopt the broadband nutrition labels. So this means that the policy supporting the broadband labels no longer has the White House's formal backing, which could reduce the FCC pressure to advance it. So similar to just digital discrimination, we're unsure on the enforcement of broadband labels moving forward. Okay, next slide. And I just want to share this resource with you. While it's called the State Digital Equity Implementation Manual, it's great for any organization looking to start up digital equity programs. So it will help you come up with best practices and tips for developing implementation strategies. So how do you plan to start programs? If you would like, or an organization, they would like to start structuring sub-grant programs, it has recommendations for how to do that, as well as some information on measuring and evaluating programs for sustainability. Okay, and then I'm going to pass it back to Pamela to go over working groups.
Thank you so much, Shauna. Awesome. So we do have a few working groups, and we would love for you all to join. We have a coalition working group. So in order to join both of these working groups, you have to be part of the NDIA community. So the first one, you have to be part of a digital inclusion coalition, or thinking of joining or starting one. So the contact there is Erin at digitalinclusion.org. And then also we have a digital navigator working group. So again, you have to be part of a digital navigator program and also be a NDIA affiliate. And if you are interested in joining that, then reach out to Nate at digitalinclusion.org. And just got a few kind of events or announcements to make, and then we'll open it up for questions. So first up is Digital Inclusion Week. We are really excited for another Digital Inclusion Week, and if you're not familiar with it, it is an annual nationwide event that's dedicated to raising awareness about digital equity and showcasing our collective efforts and impactful digital inclusion work. It's going to be on the first full week of August, which is October, first full week of October, October 6th through 10th. And again, it's a great opportunity to raise awareness about digital inclusion, to reach more community members and gain supporters, funders, and partners. And the theme this year is Community-Driven Digital Futures, which recognizes that the most impactful solutions spring directly from within our own communities. So if you are new to Digital Inclusion Week, or you are wanting to think about ideas on how to participate, join our upcoming info session on August 28th at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. You get to learn more about what this event, what this annual Digital Inclusion Week event is, and you get to discover ways to get involved, how your organization can, utilize Digital Inclusion Week to boost your visibility. And then we'll also be exploring ways that individuals and organizations can participate. So if you already have a Digital Inclusion Week registered, go ahead and register it on our Digital Inclusion Week 2025 event page. There is a registration form there, and you can get your event featured on our list of events as well as our map, so that if people want to see what Digital Inclusion Week events are happening, they can search what's happening nearby them. And this is another plug to join our annual Net Inclusion Digital Inclusion Conference. So Net Inclusion is going to be in Chicago next year from February 3 to 5th. And we're really excited. We want you all to join. Some really popular topics on here are federal policies impacting digital equity. We also have sessions and workshops on digital inclusion best practices across the country and digital inclusion programming like digital navigators, digital health equity, accessibility, serving diverse populations. And it's also a really great place to network with other digital inclusion advocates and practitioners. And so we invite you all to become an A+ member, an Affiliate Plus member. Joining as an Affiliate Plus member is the best way to fully engage with the NDIA community and elevate your organization's role in the national digital inclusion movement. And it's perfect for organizations that are looking to lead, build national credibility, and stay connected on a strategic level. It is a paid membership with a sliding scale pricing starting at $100 per year, which is based on your organization's budget. And A+ members get priority visibility on NDIA's media and communications, as well as an extra monthly community call with NDIA's executive director and a network of other Affiliate Plus peers. And you also get access to working groups, pilot programs, and policy efforts. If a paid membership isn't an option right now, we also highly encourage you to join NDIA as an affiliate, which is free of charge. And affiliate membership, it's a great starting point, and you still get access to our very active and robust NDIA community listserv that has over 3,000 members sharing ideas and digital inclusion resources. You also get an invitation to our monthly community calls and NDIA webinars, and you will also get updates on NDIA news, tools, and digital equity updates as well. And you will also be featured on our affiliate webpage and on our affiliate map. All right, we want to thank all of you for joining us. If you have any questions, I kind of looked through, I don't see any questions in the chat. So we'll stick around for a few moments if you do have any questions. The recording and the slides and resources that we share throughout the chat will be emailed to you shortly. So have a look out for that. And I'll give it a few moments. But if nobody has any questions, again, you can still contact us after. Thank you, Mary Ellen. You can still reach out to us after if a question does come out to you. But thank you all for joining us, and I will stop the recording. And I hope you all have a great rest of the day. Reach out to us, join the community, and I hope I see you soon. Take care, everyone. Bye.